Good morning, good evening, whichever part of the world you are in. Welcome to the session on Agile in Data Analytics. Session will start in a few minutes. We'll give some more time for others to join. Thanks for waiting. Hello again, everybody. Good morning, good evening, whichever part of the world you are. So, one more minute and we'll start the session. Alrighty. So, let us start our session and time in the day. Yeah. Hello, everybody, and good morning and good evening who have joined just now. So, I am Ramkrishna K V, and I work as the Director of Delivery at Canada in USA. Before this, my assignments were with Microsoft, Development Bank of Singapore, Dubai Customs, Royal Bank of Scotland in UK. At Canada, I manage three clients in different domains, which are into logistics, blockchain, and a product company which is into agile analytics. I mean, analytics automation, having more than 10,000 And the logistic company I work with deals employees and other stakeholders for this client spread across the globe, including India, Philippines, Netherlands. Because we learn something over this. Before going into the agenda, like what we are going to see as a part of this session, like I have formatted 5 major challenges in data analytics projects. There are many, but these are the top 5 and most common pitfalls in a data analytics project. Let us see what are there. Collecting meaningful data and quality of data which is collected. Basically, data from different channels makes it difficult for the team to drill down and determine the critical insights. Sometimes the rawness of the data is huge, and they end up analyzing the data that's readily available and not the one that truly adds value to the business. The second one is business requirements not clear. At the start of any project, we generally talk to our peers who are in the IT department of the client. Basically, they can give access to their environment, they can give access to the data, they can give access to their infrastructure, anything. But what about the business requirements? What about the actual things what the business users want? What are the actual insights which the business users are looking for? So these and all will not be clear. Access to the right access to data at the right time. More often than not, data analytics teams start working on sample data. All of us would have done this. Team starts working on design based on the sample data. This has a very high chance of creating scalability issues when the actual data is available, which might even be more complex than the sample data. And then selecting the right tool. Is Power BI good? Tableau is better? Or RapidMiner is better? Never know. To understand this, people should see what exactly our requirements are. The teams should seek the professional help. Once the tool is decided, have a formal training sessions and all. We'll see having agile, having trainings, how agile can help in these sort of situations wherein data analytics teams faces the challenges. This is going to be our agenda today, wherein we'll have an overview of data analytics with typical features and deliverables, tools and platforms, and a look on Agile Scrum, the 4 principles which I call as manifesto of Agile development, the sprint ceremonies, the common pitfalls, guiding principles, and then using Agile Scrum in data analytics projects. We'll have a redefined manifesto for Agile analytics, an overview of using Agile Scrum in analytics projects, the benefits, challenges, the development categories, everything. Moving ahead, the first slide. What exactly is data analytics? Data analytics, as per Informatica, is a pursuit of extracting meaning from raw data using specialized computer systems. The term computer systems is a bit confusing. Actually, the computer systems here Informatica meant is the tools, the analytics tools which which the team develops, and the tools which are available in the market. These systems transform, organize, and model the data to draw conclusions and identity patterns. Based on the conclusions drawn and the identity patterns which the users identify, they make very critical decisions which are related to their business. Now, what are all the typical features and deliverables as a part of data analytics? The typical features are ETL or ELT and the data models, and the deliverables generally are reports and dashboards. ELT and ETL both are both are data integration methods. Each has unique characteristics and is suitable for different data needs. The most important difference is that ETL transforms the data before loading it to the server, and an ELT process does it afterwards. In an ETL process, data is extracted from different data sources like databases. It can be different types of files, XMLs, flat files, or Excel sheets, or the legacy systems, or some data extracted from the web pages. It can be anything. The data source can be anything. This data is transformed and loaded into a data warehouse, and after which the data is analyzed and fed to the analytical tools. In an ELT process, data is extracted and loaded into the data warehouse before transformation. The transformation happens in the warehouse and then it is fed to the analytical tools. Coming to the data model, there are two types of data models, logical data model and a physical data model. A logical data model establishes the correct structure of data elements and the relationships among them. It makes elements of conceptual data modeling a step further by adding more information to them. Physical data model is nothing but the actual databases, the tables we create, the columns we define, the data types we define, the primary and the foreign key logics. These are all form of physical data model. Now coming to the deliverables, reports and dashboards. A report is a document put together to analyze data around a specific activity. The activity can be a project update, a daily status report, a weekly status report, or a test report, or a project closure report. Whatever is the activity, a report is used to communicate the performance of the activity. The idea is to help the reader devise a plan or a strategy after reviewing the data over a spread of time. A dashboard is a visual representation of selected KPIs that show you progress in one look. Various types of dashboards are like the KPIs which we discussed, the actual versus the real KPIs, time intelligence dashboards, which are year over year, year to date, monthly averages, yearly averages, the variances, so on and so forth. And another most commonly used dashboard is the trend lines. Now, this picture is by Gartner actually, and if you see the right top square, it is divided as leaders, visionaries, niche players, and challengers. You can very well see that Microsoft Power BI and Tableau are the market leaders along with Qlik. And over the last couple of years, Oracle, IBM, and Looker are fast catching up. We'll have a quick look on Agile, Scrum, and different manifestos of a Scrum methodology. Scrum is a framework that helps teams work together. Scrum encourages the teams to learn through experiences, self-organize while working on a problem, and reflect on their wins and losses to continuously improve. As the picture depicts, you can see it has a product backlog, it has sprint planning meetings, it has sprint backlog, a product backlog which is a set of defined user stories, a sprint backlog which is a subset of product backlog and which are committed by the Scrum to be delivered within an agreed timeline. That agreed timeline is called a sprint duration. The picture also has the various people who are responsible. The product backlog, the sprint planning, and sprint backlog. These are all, if you can see, the product owner and the team are accountable for these three ceremonies. The Scrum Master, however, manages the entire sprint, the daily scrums, the impediments, and the other ceremonies, including the sprint retrospective. The finished work at the end of the sprint follows by a sprint review. Now, what is a manifesto? The 4 pillars, as they say, for Agile Scrum. Individuals and interactions over comprehensive documentation. This focuses on giving more importance to communication with the clients. There are several things the client may want to ask, and it is the responsibility of the team to ensure that all questions and suggestions of the clients are promptly dealt with. Working product over comprehensive documentation. In the past, probably 6 to 7 years back, more focus used to be on proper documentation of every aspect of the project. There were several times when this was done at the expense of actual final product. The Agile values dictate that the first and foremost duty of the project team is completing the final deliverables as identified by the customers. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Agile principles require customers to be involved in all phases of the project. It is a major advantage of Agile methodology. Last minute negotiations are avoided, which saves both time and resources. If the customers are kept in the loop during the development process, team members can ensure that the final product meets all the requirements of the client. The key line here is, gentlemen, the final product meets all requirements of the client. How is this achieved? By continuous collaboration with the customer. It's a major advantage. I have seen projects in my past experience wherein the end users and the other stakeholders were giving the feedback 1 or 2 days before the go live, because the demo was given a couple of days before the go live or a week before the go live, and the changes which they suggest or which they asked, the effort which was required for those changes were more than a couple of months. So instead of having those last minute firefighting, last minute changes, the continuous customer collaboration helps us deliver what exactly the customer wants. Responding to change or following a plan. Contrary to the general conception of the past that agile values are against using elaborate plans before the start of the project and continue sticking no matter what or who the planned people were. Circumstances change, and sometimes customers demand extra features in the final product based on the market conditions, based on the competitor go live dates, based on the changes which the competitors make. In these cases, project managers, scrum masters, and the team members must adapt quickly in order to deliver a quality product and ensure 100% satisfaction, customer satisfaction. Again, the key point here is to ensure 100% customer satisfaction. I'm sure most of us uh, live in an environment wherein customer satisfaction is utmost important. So the responding to the changes which the customer wants is a key thing here. Moving ahead, the typical Scrum ceremonies: backlog refinement, sprint planning, daily stand-up, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. Backlog refinement. It's an activity involving the product owner, scrum master, and the team. PO discusses the requirements along with the team, updates the user stories based on the discussions with the team, and the team sizes the stories. The sizing of the stories can be done in various ways. The most commonly used is the story pointing, wherein teams use the Fibonacci series of 1, 2, 3, 8, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, so on and so forth. There are teams which use the t-shirt sizing, which is basically small, medium, large, XL, so on and so forth. And a very few percentage still uses number of hours to estimate the stories. And then comes sprint planning. Once the refinement is done, product backlog is prioritized. As a part of sprint planning, team commits to deliver a set of user stories and the bugs. The commitment by the team should be based on the capacity of the team. The important point here, as you heard, is it is a team commitment, not an individual commitment. In the future slides, like in the forthcoming slides, we will see why the team commitment is important. And the daily stand-up is the next ceremony, wherein it is a meeting maximum which occurs for 15 minutes for a typical Scrum team, and the team answers 3 typical questions: what is done today, what's the plan for tomorrow, and impediments, if any. It is the responsibility of the Scrum Master to address those impediments, which will ensure smooth delivery of the team. Sprint review. In some parts of the world, this is called a sprint demo. The Scrum team demos what is developed in the sprint to all the stakeholders. Any feedback from stakeholders is taken and will be prioritized accordingly. The changes will go to the backlog again. It will be a part of backlog refinement, and the PO prioritizes, analyzes the changes which are suggested by the stakeholders, and accordingly they are prioritized and then taken up in the forthcoming sprints. And the most important activity is the sprint retro. This is a very important activity in the entire Scrum methodology. Team reflects on the sprint, what went well in the sprint, what were the hurdles they faced during the execution and delivering of the user stories, and what were the changes which they see in the process implemented, in the communication cadence which is there in the within the teams and across the teams, and what are all the meetings which took time, so on and so forth. The best practice is to address the top two or three issues which are identified by the team, and the Scrum Master again is responsible to ensure the changes which the team expects are done. Now, this is where actually we'll discuss how exactly Agile Scrum helps analytics projects in the next 4 to 5 slides. Now, in this slide, I have given a few points from the data analytics team point of view and from the end user's point of view in using Agile Scrum in analytics project. The first and foremost with respect to the team is the focus on a single data set or a data source at a time. If you remember in my first slide, I said data quality and the availability, the abundance availability of data sometimes is a big issue. Now, if you start focusing on single data set at a time or single data source at a time, it will make life easier. It will make the designs easier. It will make the development easier. Team gets immersed in business process and business rules by constant talking to the end users. Team understands the big picture while breaking the deliverables into smaller chunks. Team gets more constant feedback because there are constant meetings happening with the end users, and there are sprint demos at the end of every sprint. With this, there are the ambiguities on what exactly the users want, and the gray areas on what kind of decisions are the business users are going to take based on the dashboards delivered. All these things will be nullified. And with respect to the business understanding of complexities and oddities of the data, for a business user, the data they use day in, day out, the data is the data. They don't understand how complex it is for the actual analytics team to understand the data. And they don't understand in general on how difficult it is for the data analytics team to understand the business requirements and how a dashboard helps them in taking a decision. Now, when the users start interacting with the team, when they work in a collaborative manner, they start understanding the difficulties of the team. Now, with that, if you see the point number 2, what happens? The user stories which the users define will be more detailed. They'll express their needs in a more detailed way for whatever solution is being delivered. Explore the data and drive the insights with more focused use cases. So this is with respect to the end users. Now, Agile analytics development. This is a little bit different from the regular software development. If you want to implement an analytics, an Agile approach in your analytics project, these are the 3 important things: the culture of the team, the practices which the team follows, and the tools which the team uses. The first and foremost thing is the culture, which is basically the mindset of the team. Unfortunately, the first step most of the organizations take in building Agile capabilities is to look for a tool to buy. No, that's not the first step to do. As I said, it is unfortunate. It is like having a fancy kitchenware in my kitchen and say that from tomorrow I'll be a world's best cook. No, that won't happen. The mindset needs to change. An Agile approach begins with an attitude that team is going to work closely together on every part of the solution, reviewing each other's code, approving code mergers, messaging throughout the day, and collaborating on designs. Work is grouped into sprints lasting 1 or 2 weeks, and the best way to have it in 2 weeks, and prioritized by the business stakeholders. That means shifting away from thinking of projects lasting 3 to 6 months that start with long requirement documents and big bang go live. In my previous experience, I've seen the projects which took 3 to 4 months for documentation and the corresponding sign-offs. It was as it was like around 7 to 8 years ago, wherein a huge project, of course, but it took more than 3 to 4 months for arriving at the business requirements and the corresponding system requirements and getting their sign-off from the respective stakeholders. It also means avoiding productivity killing interruptions from last-minute requirements and firefighting, no matter how important the request or the requester may be. This Agile mindset must be shared by the team and the stakeholder group. Again, this is the key statement. The agile mindset must be shared by the team and by the stakeholder group. It is always important to have a buy-in of the stakeholders and the decision makers of this agile mindset. Coming to practices, many data teams operate something like having a database, some data integration tools, and a reporting tool. Any changes which are made to the live data with only database backup to save you in case of disaster. Old versions of code are saved occasionally. Developers divide the solution into parts so they can own a discrete part and be sure they don't step on each other's toes, which they think it's an added benefit that they don't need to spend time looking at other people's code. No, that's a recipe of failure. That won't work. I'm sure most of us worked in this kind of environment a few years back, and most of us spent a few years in a development environment like this. What it causes? It's an unstable environment, slow to deliver results, and the results are inconsistent. Productivity and quality of the team decreases, and it can hamper the growth of a company. In an agile methodology, automation enables a whole new iterative working model, as was mentioned in the slide. Code is pushed to the server in a controlled fashion, bundled in releases. Each release is preceded by a build to the testing for any failures in functionalities or any identification of bugs. Sprints cultivate into a named version of build, and the versions are pushed to test and production environments in a controlled configuration management process. New environments may be created on a fly as infrastructure as a code. Again, a live example here is one of the client I work with wanted an environment, though they had a testing environment, a development environment, and a production environment. They wanted a separate environment wherein the business users can test on the production as is data before pushing anything to the production. And this happened within no time because they had a very matured practices, a very matured agile process in their analytics project. Without these things, it would have been like more than 6 months to have a new environment which is production as is. None of these practices would be possible without an automation collaboration that are key to agile analytics development. And all of them are essential to growing a data organization beyond people and servers. Now, coming to the tools, it's an easier part. There are multiple vendors selling all or part of toolset and enable agile development practices to data analytics projects. I've categorized around 8 key things which are important for any tool before we select. Continuous integration, version controls, automated build and testing, work task management, automated monitoring, and intelligent alerts. These are the important things. In market, a more streamlined integrated tools like Microsoft Azure DevOps or Jira cater to 6 or 7 of those categories, and add a messaging platform like Slack or Microsoft Teams to that, and it will be a perfect package to your analytics team. In this slide, we will discuss about the data environment complexity. We have I've categorized it as like basic, moderate, and advanced, and we'll see how important it is to follow the process in this slide. Small teams need simple process, and large teams with complex requirements need heavier and more formal process. If you are a small team, maybe 2 or 3 developers, you should be ready to pick and choose the parts of agile methodology and DevOps that make sense for your situation, for your delivery, and for your organization. You don't have to do all the Scrum or all the agile process. You have ample time after business hours to make changes to your production environment. As the picture says, the availability of the reports are probably during only the business hours, which is probably 8 to 9 hours, or let us give or take 10 hours. And you have ample time to make the product changes in the production. So you can skip probably the testing environment deployments or the change approval board, the CAB formalities, so on and so forth. With a smaller group, probably like 4 to 5 developers, one of the senior person may act multiple roles, one of of a product owner and a developer also. Small teams have the advantage of being more responsive to changes in business priorities, and a quicker turnaround time to new features. So don't burden them, the team members, rather, I would say, with more roadblocks than absolutely necessary. Coming to the largest, the more complex organization, wherein I'm sure most of us fall into that spectrum. The agile methodology is crucial to being able to deliver value in the time frame that business sponsors demand. Teams working in this environment must place a priority on frequent communication in real time, must have tight version control and avoid conflicts, and they must also have strong product management principles. The bigger you get, the lesser agile you tend to become, and you tend to fall apart from following the process. So the idea here for larger teams should be starting less work and finishing more work sooner. That is a maturity which any of the bigger teams would like to have. Now, earlier in the screens, earlier in the slides, I would say we have seen the four principles, the four pillars of the Scrum. Here, I have modified the Scrum manifesto a little bit and adapted to data analytics projects. The four pillars here would be decisions over dashboards. By focusing on what people want to do with the data, we can move past the first set of questions they ask, focus on valuable iterations and follow-up questions, build trust, cultivate curiosity, and drive action. The key point here is to build trust, cultivate curiosity. Cultivating curiosity in the business users is important. Functional analysis or perfect outputs. We need to understand that the data analytics projects, the in data analytics products, the end product is never 100% perfect. However, the end goal should be to understand the functional analysis, what exactly the user wants from this dashboard, what kind of decisions which our users want to take by seeing the dashboards. That is important to understand than concentrating on having 100% or 100% perfect product. Sharing data over gatekeeping data. So the team, the data analytics team, and the business users and the clients should work in a collaborative manner. We should have to share responsibility of our data and data products with our business partners. This will help in building trust and keep us all accountable for cultivating great data products and data-driven cultures. Earlier, we have seen one of the challenges is the availability of data at the right time. There were instances where the project duration was 6 months, but the access to the data was given at the end of third month. So people should understand that the the development starts once we have the access to the data, so that the design will be effective. And hence, the sharing data or gatekeeping data is really important. And the final one is the most generic one, individual interactions over process and tools. There will be a lot of ambiguities. There will be a lot of gray areas when a team starts dealing with the data. So collaborate, talk to people, make use of your relationships, rely on your contacts with the business users rather than looking at the process, rather than looking at the tools for information. The more frequent you talk to the business users, the better the product quality will be. What are all the pitfalls? See, any process, anything which we implement will have its own advantages and disadvantages. We'll see the major disadvantages which teams tend to do while while implementing agile methodology in any analytics project. The first and foremost thing is purely formatted stories and unclear acceptance criteria. In one of my projects, very recently, as recently as 2 to 3 months back, one of the POs made a user story with 2 to 3 lines, adding an Excel sheet of sample data and asking to create dashboards, and an acceptance criteria which had how the dashboard should look like. The acceptance criteria did not have what exactly they want to derive, what exactly they are looking in the dashboard, what kind of decisions, what kind of insights they are looking at. Nothing was there. So It was a poorly written user story. Now, what happens if that is done? See the second point. Story points are too large. The same thing happened in my team also. The team pointed it at 21 points, which took more than two sprints to deliver, because the team was not sure of the sample data, because nothing was explained in the user story on what exactly the data is and what exactly the data is used for. There was no explanation given on how user is going to use the dashboard to take any decisions, and what are all the insights they are looking from those dashboards. Nothing was given, and hence the story points are large. What happens if the story points are large? The tasks which you create from the user story will be will be huge. You cannot finish a task within a workday. The best practice is to finish a task in a workday. If your task is going to spill for 2 to 3 days, for sure your user story is going to spill for more than a week or more than a sprint, which is not ideal. These are all the recipes for failure. And similarly, on the other note, underestimating the story size and the complexity. Like I said earlier, most of the teams derive the story points or derive the project plans based on the sample data given, and with an assumption that they know the business requirements clearly, and with an assumption that they have the access to the data. First, these kind of things needs to be checked, whether you have the access to the quality data, whether is the data really good enough to develop a dashboard. Even if the dashboard is created, is the data is good enough to take decisions? No. These are all the recipes of failure. Now, what needs to be done? We'll see in the next slide. But here where the spike stories comes. We'll see in the next slide in the recommendation section how a spike story helps in understanding the actual user stories and the complexities. And the last but not the least, turning daily stand-ups into discussion meetings. Again, I'll take one of the examples of one of my clients. So there was a general tendency to make a daily stand-up into a detailed discussion sessions, deep diving into the issues. Like, it used to take 2 to 3 hours to finish a daily stand-up call. No, a big no. A daily stand-up call should be for 15 minutes, not more than that. A typical Scrum team of 7 to 10 members, 15 minutes, 3 questions to the point. That's it, done. Do not extend your daily stand-up meeting more than 15 minutes. If there are any issues to be discussed, keep it in the parking lot. Have them prioritized. Schedule separate meetings. Have your Scrum Master talk to the business users. Schedule meetings and get the requirements and understand the requirements. That's the best way to go ahead. Now, conclusion with the benefits, the challenges, and the recommendations. What are all the benefits? The empirical evidence, as it says, Scrum is founded on the very principle of execution based on what is known. Simply put, deliver something, see what works, see what doesn't work, adjust your plan accordingly. Customer focus. This is what we crave for. Scrum focuses on delivering customer value. It frames development work from the lens of customer and encourages stakeholders to provide constant feedback through practices such as sprint reviews and sprint retrospectives. The regularity. It's rigid time boundaries. The process rigid time boundaries allow the teams to get used to the flowing through a regular work cadence. Every 2 weeks, the sprint demo. Every day, daily stand-up to know the impediments. Every bi-weekly sprint plannings. Every week, backlog refinements. Bi-weekly sprint retrospective. So there is a work cadence, a regular work cadence, which the team gets used to and the user clients get used to. Autonomy. By providing teams with broad autonomy to self-govern, they are happier, more productive, and more engaged, for sure. Improvement through inspection. This inspection, teams constantly inspect themselves, especially during retrospectives at the end of each sprint. Also, the peer reviews, which we talked about in the practices slide, the peer reviews, the code reviews are also equally important for improvement. Teams improve performance through each development cycle by learning and adapting from the previous cycles. And well known, yes, of course, as per a survey, by Scrum Alliance, the numbers given by Scrum Alliance in 2020, there are around 20 million Scrum practitioners, which makes team members or the management might already have familiarity and experience with Scrum, which eases the Scrum adoption. And then comes accountability. Individuals feel accountable to their team members. If you remember, I was highlighting a sentence that the team commits to deliver. Yes, it is the team which commits to deliver. It's not the individuals. And hence, each individual take care of the team. Each individual will feels accountable for the team delivery. This is reinforced by the transparent nature of the Scrum and practices such as daily stand-ups, sprint reviews, where team members are constantly demonstrating their work. And then the sense of urgency. You always have the deadline looming because the general practice is that it is a bi-weekly sprint, and at the end of sprint there is a sprint demo. So the deadline is always looming, and the teams are motivated to deliver. Now coming to the challenges, this time boxing challenges. Although it provides numerous benefits, yes, there is a controversial or challenging thing, says that it is the time boxing challenge. The time required to implement a solution for most of the data analytics teams is because the data is ambiguous, and it depends on unknowns such as when we'll get the data access, a questionable data quality, and the amount of data we have. When teams are pressed on delivery with having these problems, they may have cut the corners, which can lead to incomplete testing, probably rushed analysis, and unnecessary technical debt. Definition of done challenges. Again, because of the ambiguity of data and the change in market situations and the quality of data available, the change in the business requirements, FPO is always compelled to change the definition of done of a particular user story. While creating a story or while defining a requirement, there might be a particular dashboard which is required to have a particular insights. However, it may change because of the change in requirements by the end users. Like I said, the insights today may not be the same similar useful as tomorrow. So the definition of done changes are more frequent in these kind of projects rather. Meeting overheads, like I said, the daily stand-ups taking more time, or in general a team spends more than 4 to 5 hours approximately every week. So the more effective the meetings are, the better for the team. Coming to the recommendations, provide training. Organization that implements Scrum should provide extensive training to the team and also the stakeholders, the business stakeholders. And then prioritize spikes. This is what I was talking about. There was an instance wherein, like, a project was planned for thinking that it was like at the feature level, it was sized as a large project, small, medium, large being the typical sizes of features. So however, once a spike story is taken up, basically a spike story is a research and discovery story wherein the team works on the research on how exactly to develop a particular product, what designs can be used, what technologies can be used, and the research and the discovery work happens with a specific target to reach or a time bound activity. Now, as I said, in a very recent example, it was feature was sized as large. However, after this spike story, it was felt that it is a double XL size, an 80% increase in the effort. So spike stories are really important. So as I said, team should be allowed to work on the spike stories, which basically sits along with the regular user stories in the backlog. They are considered done when specific research objectives are met or a time limit expires. Another recommendation is divide and conquer. Team often don't know how much effort a task will require. A possible solution is to create the task in a minute way possible. As the smaller the task, the better for the team. because the estimate will be more accurate in that case. Shorten the sprints. The best way is to have a 2 week sprint. Probably like you can have deployments for bugs every week and sprint deployments every couple of weeks, which we do at one of our client place, so that the business users, the wait for the business users will become less for bug fixes. Renegotiate work during the sprint. The typical practice is once a commitment is done to the sprint, renegotiation will not cannot happen. However, it is different from for a data analytics project, because, as I said, there is every chance of a change in definition of done. There is every chance of a spike story resulting in more effort. So be open to renegotiate the work during a sprint, and then do the least understood work first, which is basically like take up stories which have more uncertainties, so that any impediments, any dependencies within the team, outside the team, can be identified at the earlier stage, and have a scrum master with data analytics knowledge. So this concludes this session. Next 5 to 10 minutes is open for any question and answers, and my LinkedIn ID is given in the chat box. So any help required, any suggestions required for implementation of Agile Scrum methodologies, please do contact me, and I'll be silent for the next 5 to 10 minutes and open for questions if any. Okay, so this session was is live on YouTube also. So there was one question actually from one of the viewers from YouTube who says, "How are spike stories prioritized?" Good, nice question. So let me tell you, the prioritization of a spike story depends on when exactly the project starts. A spike story should be taken up before the start of a project, or before the start of, like, if there is a feature which needs to be delivered, let us say by the end of December, and it takes 2 sprints, each sprint of 2 weeks, so a month is required to deliver that feature. The general practice is to take up the spike story in the first sprint, give it a week's time, and then during the sprint itself, and proceed with the development. That's a recipe of failure. The best practice is in the sprint which is before the actual start date, take up the spike story, ask the team to work on the spike story, research, discover, analyze on different ways, so that before the start of the sprint itself, you'll have a clear cut idea of what kind of roadblocks which can be which can be encountered, what kind of effort is required, what kind of dependencies are there with the other outside, the integrations and all with outside our team. So these and all will be listed down as a part of spike story. So it is always better to close the spike story before the start of the sprint, or rather before the start of the development of a particular feature. We have 3 more minutes for Q&A, so we'll see. Sorry.
Ram, am I
Yep.
audible?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah. So, are there any examples which you can quote from the real life implementations, real time implementations, on how it has impacted and what are the benefits these best practices has given? Are there any metrics which can showcase all these benefits?
Sure. Actually, thanks for the question, Raghu. So, around 2 years back, when I took up a project, when I took up an assignment for one of the clients, it had around 5 or 6 Scrum teams who were working on data analytics projects. And one particular team is purely data analytics. They develop products which are into insights. They develop dashboards which shows the variances, which shows the KPIs, and all which we discussed earlier. So they were following a regular, like hybrid model of Kanban, waterfall kind of. So we started agile methodology there. One basic thing which everybody needs to understand is the changes, the fruits of the implementation will not happen overnight. What we have done, we have taken a set of stories. We have taken 20 user stories and started pointing them. The first and foremost point here is to take a base story. To start a sprint, a base story is really important. We will agree, the team agrees on a particular story point. Like let us say, if a story takes, let us say, 3 days for completion, story takes 3 days for completion, and it has medium complexity and a fair bit of uncertainties, we'll say like at the start it is a 5 pointer. So that particular user story will become like the base story, baseline user story, they say. Now take another story, compare it with this user story which you baseline. Is it difficult than that to implement, or is it easier than that? If it is difficult than that, give an 8 pointer. If it is easier than that, give a 3 pointer. So like that we have uh, pointed everything. And the next is to have the data. We had different environments for the client. One is testing environment, one is a development environment, and the production environment. So to start with, we ensured there is enough data in development environment for the team to start executing these things, so that there is the ambiguities and the gray areas are reduced considerably. And then we did a sprint planning. As a part of sprint planning, before that, it's a sprint zero activities, which we generally say. We did capacity planning, saying that like what is the team size available, what is the bandwidth available for the team, and how many story points which the team can be complete. That's an assumption basically, because that was the first sprint. So we thought we'll give 30% of time for unforeseen issues, like the bugs which come from production and all, and we took 70% of the time of the team for taking up the new stories. So we took up the stories, started sprint with 30% this thing. And what we have done, we had a product owner who is very good at the business. The product owner came from the business point of view, which was good for us. So he was the bridge between the actual requirements from the users, the business users, and the data analytics team, which we were there. And fortunately, I was the scrum master there. So what happened was, like, we had initially regular meetings with the end users along with the PO. So that made our refinements easier. The first was difficult. The first refinement was very difficult, very tough. The second one was difficult, and the third one was good, and the fourth one was smooth. It took a month for us to have a proper refinement session. Similarly, it took us 3 to 4 sprints to arrive at an average velocity of the team, and to identify what exactly the team can deliver. Number two. And number three, the spike stories. We were introducing Elasticsearch. We were trying to integrate with external tools and all. So the spike stories. Then we started creating spike stories. Then we started taking up spike stories for which the actual development starts in the next sprint. So these are all the best practices which we did. And like I said, it took around a good 4 to 6 months for the team to reach a medium maturity level, which we spoke a couple of slides earlier, wherein there was automation in deployments, there was continuous deployments, there were there were alerts when any of the environments is down, any of the systems is down. So all these things happened over a span of 6 to 8 months, and now they are in cruise mode. I hope I answered your question, Raghu.
Yes, Ram. Thanks for that.
Thank you. So I think yes, we are. I mean, that's the end of question and answer sessions. Also, we are at the fag end of at this session. So thank you everybody once again for attending this session. It was great having all of you as audience. Thank you. Have a nice day ahead.